A struggling waitress with hidden skills saved a man. She had no idea he was the CEO of the chain. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The morning rush at Melrose Diner was chaos. The kind that made coffee spill, orders blur, and patience wear thin. Emma Reyes balanced 3 plates on one arm, dodging a customer storming out while calling an apology over her shoulder. The smell of bacon and burnt toast clung to her clothes, and her sneakers, once white, had turned a tired gray. For most customers, she was invisible, a background sound between clinking cups and half-heard gossip. But today wasn't just another day. Emma had been working double shifts all week to cover rent, her fingertips raw from scrubbing pans after hours, her sketchbook untouched in her locker. Art was her secret, her quiet rebellion against exhaustion. Sometimes, between refills, she'd draw faces of strangers on napkins just to remember she still could. It was late afternoon when he walked in. The man looked completely out of place. Dark navy suit damp from the drizzle outside, no tie, hair a little messy as if the day had been longer than he planned. He sat at the counter, scrolling through his phone, eyes heavy, shoulders tense. Emma grabbed a menu and approached with her practiced smile. Hey there, welcome to Melrose. Coffee first. He looked up, startled, as if pulled back to earth. Yeah? Coffee. Black, please. His voice was deep but tired, like he hadn't used it much lately. She poured the coffee, noticing the tremor in his hand as he reached for the cup. Before she could ask if he was okay, the color drained from his face. The cup slipped, shattering on the counter, hot coffee spilling over his wrist. Sir. Emma rushed around, grabbing a towel, ignoring the shards that cut her palm. He swayed on the stool, eyes unfocused. Without thinking, she caught him before he hit the floor. Hey, stay with me. Can you hear me? She said, pressing the towel to his wrist, heart pounding. The other customers froze, someone finally shouting to call 911. Emma stayed with him, keeping pressure on the wound, whispering reassurances she wasn't sure he could hear. It's okay. Help's coming. You're gonna be fine. She didn't know who he was, only that he looked like a man who hadn't let anyone take care of him in a long time. When the paramedics arrived, they lifted him gently onto the stretcher. One of them looked at Emma. You did good, miss. You kept him conscious. She nodded, breath shaky, hands still trembling. Do you know his name? The medic asked. Emma blinked. No. He just ordered coffee. Hours later, when the diner finally emptied, Emma sat in the break room, staring at her bandaged hand. A faint burn from spilled coffee still stung her skin, but what stuck with her wasn't the pain, it was his eyes. The way they flickered with something familiar. Maybe fear. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe both. She didn't know that man. But somehow, she felt she would see him again. She just didn't know how soon. Outside, the rain started again, tapping softly against the windows like a heartbeat, steady, patient, waiting. What Emma didn't know was that the man she helped would soon come back into her life in a way she never expected. But that's a story for another time. 2 days later, the diner felt quieter than usual. The morning rush had faded, leaving the air heavy with the smell of old coffee and fried eggs. Emma wiped down the counter, her hand still wrapped in a small bandage from the cut she got helping the man. Every time she looked at it, she remembered his pale face, the way his voice cracked before he collapsed. No one had come back asking about him, and she had not even learned his name. Maybe he was just another stranger passing through. She tried to convince herself of that, but the thought did not sit right. Around noon, the bell over the door chimed. Emma looked up and froze. The man from 2 days ago walked in, alive, steady on his feet, his wrist still wrapped in a light brace. He looked cleaner now, sharper, the exhaustion gone from his face. His suit was pressed, his shoes spotless. Hi, he said, with a faint smile. I owe you a new coffee. Emma blinked. You are okay? She said softly. You scared everyone. He nodded, his smile sheepish. Yeah, low blood sugar, long day, no food. You saved me from cracking my head open on the tile, so thank you. Emma chuckled nervously. That would have ruined everyone's lunch. He laughed, the sound warmer this time. Mind if I sit? She gestured to the same stool he had fallen from last time. As long as you promise not to pass out again. He held up a hand in mock surrender. Deal. She poured him a fresh cup of coffee, careful this time to keep her distance from the edge of the counter. So, she said, you never told me your name. He hesitated for half a second before replying. Daniel. It came out smooth, easy, but something about the pause made her wonder. Daniel, she repeated. I'm Emma. You probably figured that out from my name tag. I did, he said, sipping his coffee. Nice to meet you properly this time. For the next few minutes, they talked. He asked about her work, and she shrugged. It pays the bills, barely. I am trying to save up for something bigger, maybe an art studio one day. Daniel looked curious. You are an artist? Emma smiled shyly. Trying to be. I sketch on my breaks. Keeps me sane. He tilted his head, studying her. Can I see? She hesitated, then pulled a folded napkin from her apron. On it was a rough pencil drawing of the diner, the counter, the stools, even the streaks of light from the windows. It was simple but alive. Daniel stared at it, genuinely impressed. This is incredible. You captured everything. Emma laughed. It's just doodling. Nothing special. It is more than that, he said softly, and for a moment, his voice held a weight she could not explain. Before she could respond, the manager called her name from the back. Break's over, Emma. She tucked the napkin away quickly. Duty calls. Daniel nodded, standing. Thanks for the coffee, and for the save. Maybe I will see you around. Maybe, she said with a small wave. As he walked out, she noticed something odd. The hostess by the door stood a little straighter when he passed, her eyes wide. Outside, a sleek black car waited at the curb. Hey! Driver in a uniform opened the door for him. Emma frowned. That was not what a regular customer drove. But before she could think more, her manager called again, and she returned to work. Later that evening, when she clocked out, she found a folded piece of paper on the counter with her name written neatly on top. Inside was a small note. Thank you, Emma. For the coffee, the sketch, and the kindness. Keep drawing. D. Tucked behind the note was a $100 bill. She stared at it, her heart racing. For a moment, she wanted to run after him, to return it, but the rain outside had already started to fall again, the same quiet drizzle as before. She folded the note back carefully, slipped it into her pocket, and whispered to herself, Daniel. Huh? Something tells me that is not the whole story. Outside, lightning flashed, and somewhere across town, Daniel sat in the back of his car, glancing at a napkin sketch in his hand. The corner of his mouth lifted as he murmured, Melrose Diner. I think I just found my next project. The next day, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Daniel. The way he looked at her sketch, how genuine his smile had been, and the $100 bill he left behind. It all felt too strange. She had tried to convince herself that he was just another customer, that his kindness didn't mean anything more, but the note he had left made that impossible. She sat at her small kitchen table, staring at the paper, the bill still in her hand. She had never been one to accept charity, especially not from someone she barely knew. Still, she couldn't deny that the money would make a huge difference right now, helping her cover bills, and maybe even buy that new set of paints she had been eyeing for months. But that wasn't what bothered her. What bothered her was how much she found herself wanting to see him again. Later that afternoon, as Emma was wiping down the counter, the door opened with its usual chime, and there he was again. Daniel, looking as polished as ever in another crisp suit, the weight of the day still evident in his tired eyes. He flashed her a smile, his hand reaching for the door just as she glanced up. Hey, he said casually, mind if I sit again? Emma nodded, trying to hide the flutter of nerves in her chest. Of course. Coffee. Yes, please, he said, his voice warm but distant, as if there were something more on his mind. He sat down at the counter, but this time, Emma noticed that there was a slight tension in his shoulders, an unease he was trying to hide behind his calm demeanor. As she poured his coffee, she couldn't help but feel the need to ask about the note. About yesterday, you didn't have to leave that money, she said, her voice uncertain. Daniel met her gaze, his eyes a little softer than the last time they spoke. I know you didn't ask for it, Emma, but you saved me. And you don't know how much that means, especially after everything that's been going on. Emma frowned slightly. What do you mean by that? Daniel's smile faded, and for a moment, he seemed to wrestle with himself, as if deciding how much to reveal. He took a deep breath. It's complicated, but you could say, I've been a bit disconnected from things. Life gets overwhelming when you're always looking over your shoulder. I needed someone to remind me that there's still good in the world. Emma felt a strange pull in her chest, a sense of empathy for him. That sounds rough, she said quietly. He nodded, taking a long sip of his coffee. It's not just that. It's the whole life I'm living. I'm the CEO of a company that's growing too fast. And sometimes, it feels like everything is moving around me while I'm stuck in one place, watching it all pass by. There was a pause as Emma tried to absorb what he was saying. He was a CEO, a millionaire. But right now, he seemed just like any other person, struggling with his own emotions. I didn't expect to find any peace in a diner like this, he added, his voice quieter now. But something about the way you just helped me without hesitation, it reminded me of who I used to be. Emma didn't know how to respond. She had never been one for long conversations with customers. Usually, she kept things polite, professional, and brief. But something about Daniel felt different. I'm glad I could help, she said, carefully setting his coffee cup in front of him. I didn't know who you were when I helped you, though. I thought you were just another guy, you know? Daniel looked up, a hint of amusement crossing his face. I'm not used to being treated like everyone else, he admitted. I guess that's why I wanted to come back here and talk to you. You didn't look at me like I was some big shot. You just treated me like a person. Emma met his gaze, feeling a warmth she hadn't expected. I've met my fair share of people who think they're above others, she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. I don't care about all that. We're all just people trying to make it through the day. There was a long silence between them, but this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. Just before he stood to leave, Daniel looked at her with a serious expression. You've got something special, Emma. You're more than just a waitress. She blinked, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. What do you mean? You've got talent. That sketch you showed me. He paused, eyes glinting slightly. It's incredible. You deserve more than this. Emma felt a knot in her throat. I just want to paint, she said softly, but it's hard to see how that can ever happen when you're stuck in a place like this. I get it, Daniel replied, his tone gentler now. But maybe it's time you stopped settling for less. You have the potential to do more, Emma. And if you ever want a chance to make that happen, I'll help. Emma didn't know what to say. She had never thought of herself as someone who could do more than what she was doing now. But the look in Daniel's eyes, the sincerity, the quiet encouragement, made her think, maybe, just maybe, there was more out there for her. As he left, he slipped a business card onto the counter. Call me, he said. And don't think I'm just offering to help with your art. I mean it. Emma watched him walk out, the weight of his words lingering in the air. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a choice in her future. The question was, would she take it? The next few days passed in a blur for Emma. She couldn't stop thinking about Daniel, about the business card he left, and the words he had said. She was torn between doubt and curiosity. Was he really offering her an opportunity, or was it just a gesture of kindness from a man who didn't know what else to do? The idea of leaving the diner, of stepping away from the only life she had known, was overwhelming, but something about the way he spoke to her made her wonder if there was more out there for her. That evening, as she sat in her tiny apartment, the rain tapping softly against the window, Emma picked up the card he had left. The words, Daniel Carter, CEO, Infinity Group, were printed in sleek black letters on a white card. She stared at the number, her heart racing. She hadn't called anyone like this before, especially not someone with that much power. What if she was just a waitress to him, someone he could help out of pity? But what if she wasn't? What if he meant what he said? After several minutes of internal debate, Emma dialed the number. Her hand trembled as she pressed the call button, and for a moment, she almost hung up. But the phone rang once, twice, before a calm, familiar voice answered. Emma, Daniel said, his voice smooth and warm. I'm glad you called. She swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the decision in her chest. I wasn't sure if you were serious when you said you'd help, she said, her voice a little shaky. I thought maybe you were just being polite. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. I don't offer help out of politeness, Daniel replied, his tone firm but kind. When I said you have potential, I meant it. You've got a gift, Emma. Don't let it go to waste. She felt a spark of hope flicker inside her. I'm not sure what to do next, she admitted. I've spent so long just surviving, I don't know how to take a chance on something bigger. Daniel was quiet for a moment, and then he spoke again, his voice steady and reassuring. The first step is always the hardest, but it's also the most important. If you really want this, if you want more than what you have now, I can help you get there. I can introduce you to people, give you the resources, the guidance you need. But you have to take that first step, Emma. Emma closed her eyes, imagining what her life could be like if she took that step. She had always dreamed of more, dreamed of being more, but she had never believed it could happen. Not for someone like her. I want to, she whispered, barely able to say the words aloud. But I don't know if I'm ready. No one is ever completely ready, Daniel said. But if you wait until you feel ready, you'll miss the opportunities that come your way. Life doesn't wait for anyone, Emma. It moves fast, and if you want to be a part of that, you've got to take a chance. She took a deep breath, her nerves suddenly stilling. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of clarity, as though the fog that had clouded her thoughts was lifting. Okay, she said, her voice stronger now. I'll take that step. Daniel's voice softened with approval. Good. I'll set things up. I'll be in touch, and we'll take it from there. Just remember, you've got this. Emma hung up the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. She stood up, walking to the small window in her apartment and looking out at the rain-soaked streets below. For the first time in a long time, she felt like the future was something she could shape, something she could reach for. The weight of the decision still lingered, but it was no longer a burden. It was a challenge, and for the first time in her life, she was ready to meet it. The next morning, Emma arrived at work early, her uniform freshly pressed, her nerves still a little on edge but filled with a new sense of purpose. As she entered the diner, she saw Daniel sitting at the counter, a fresh cup of coffee in front of him, looking just as composed as always. He looked up when she walked in, his eyes meeting hers with a knowing smile. You ready? He asked, his voice calm. But there was a hint of something deeper there, something that told her he believed in her more than she believed in herself. Emma nodded, feeling a fire spark within her. I'm ready. Daniel's smile widened, and he stood up, reaching into his coat pocket. Good. Let's get started. The next few weeks were a whirlwind for Emma. After that phone call with Daniel, everything changed. She took the first step, and it felt like the world had shifted beneath her feet. He introduced her to people, set up meetings, and helped her navigate the world she had only ever dreamed of. Daniel wasn't just offering a chance. He was showing her the path, and for the first time, Emma felt like she was walking towards something bigger than herself. The diner felt like a distant memory now, even though she was still working there part-time. Every day after her shift, she would pore over her sketchbook, her mind buzzing with new ideas, new possibilities. She learned about design, about branding, and even started experimenting with creating her own website to showcase her work. It was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. And through it all, Daniel was there, guiding her, offering advice, sometimes just listening when she needed to talk. He made it clear from the beginning that this wasn't just about her art. It was about her belief in herself, about her ability to take risks and embrace opportunities. Emma couldn't remember the last time she had believed in herself like this. One evening, after another long day of meetings and planning, Emma sat at her small kitchen table, looking over the final draft of her website. She had done it. She had created something of her own. The thought made her heart race with excitement and fear. It was one thing to create in private, but to put it out there for the world to see was something entirely different. As she clicked the button to make the site live, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. I'm proud of you, Emma. I knew you had it in you. She smiled at the message, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed back, I couldn't have done this without you. The truth was, she didn't know where she would be without Daniel. He had pushed her when she needed it, encouraged her when she doubted herself, and, more than anything, he had made her see the potential she had been too afraid to recognize. The next day, she met with Daniel for a quick coffee at a cafe downtown. As they sat at a corner table, he looked at her with that same calm, confident gaze he always had. You've made incredible progress, Emma. Your website looks fantastic. You're ready for the next step. Emma swallowed, her nerves making her heart beat faster. What do you mean by the next step? Daniel smiled, leaning back in his chair. I think it's time you take your art to a larger platform. You've been working hard, and it's time you put it out there for people to see. A gallery show, maybe? Or an online launch. Emma's stomach tightened. A gallery show? An online launch? It felt like such a huge leap. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Daniel, she admitted, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Daniel's expression softened, and he leaned forward slightly. Emma, you are more than ready. You've been preparing for this moment without even realizing it. You have the talent, the passion, and now you have the confidence to make it happen. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers nervously. I'm scared, she said quietly. Scared of failing, of putting myself out there and having people not care. Daniel reached across the table and gently placed his hand over hers. That's normal, he said, his voice steady. But you can't let fear control you. If you do, you'll never know what could happen. This is your time, Emma. Don't let it slip away. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. She had come so far in such a short time, and yet, this next step felt like the biggest leap of all. She had spent so many years waiting, watching other people chase their dreams while she stayed behind, too afraid to try. Now it was her turn. Okay, she said, her voice small but determined. Let's do it. Daniel smiled, his eyes warm with approval. I knew you'd say that. Over the next few weeks, Emma worked tirelessly to prepare for her first gallery show. Daniel helped secure the space, introduced her to curators, and even connected her with potential buyers. The whole process was a blur of excitement, nerves, and a few sleepless nights, but it all came together. On the night of the show, Emma stood in front of her artwork, surrounded by people who were admiring her work, people who were talking about her, praising her talent. She had done it. She had made it. And the best part was, she hadn't done it alone. Daniel was there, standing by her side, offering quiet encouragement, and she knew that without his belief in her, none of this would have been possible. As the evening wound down and the last guests filtered out, Daniel turned to her, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You did it, Emma. I'm so proud of you. She smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, she replied, her voice thick with emotion. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. You had it in you all along, he said softly. I just helped you see it. Emma looked around the room, the lights dimming, her paintings hanging on the walls. It was more than a dream come true. It was a new beginning. And for the first time in her life, she knew that the future was hers to shape, and she wasn't afraid to take the next step. The following months brought a whirlwind of change for Emma. After her first gallery show, things started to snowball in ways she never expected. Her artwork was now being noticed, not just by casual visitors, but by people who could open doors she had never imagined. Daniel continued to support her, but now it was different. They weren't just a mentor and mentee anymore. There was a subtle shift, a connection that neither of them could ignore. Emma felt it too, that spark between them. The way their conversations lingered longer than they should. The way he looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. Still, Emma focused on her work. She knew this was her moment, her chance to build something of her own, and she wasn't about to let anything distract her. She poured herself into her paintings, into building her brand, and in the process, she gained more confidence than she ever thought possible. One evening, after a long day of setting up for another exhibition, Emma sat in the studio, the smell of fresh paint filling the air. She was alone, reflecting on how much she had grown. She thought back to when she was just a waitress, unsure of her talent, too afraid to take that first step. Now, she was building something tangible, something real. She hadn't realized how much she had changed until she saw Daniel standing in the doorway, watching her. Silently. You look deep in thought, he said, his voice of familiar comfort. Emma looked up, meeting his eyes. I was just thinking about how far I've come. It's kind of surreal, you know? A year ago, I was serving coffee. Now, I'm planning my second show. Daniel smiled, stepping into the room and leaning against the doorframe. You've come a long way, but I always knew you had it in you. There was a pause as they both stood there, the quiet only broken by the soft sound of the city outside. Emma felt her heart beat a little faster. I couldn't have done it without you, she said quietly, the words feeling heavier than she expected. Daniel moved closer, his gaze softening. You could have done it, Emma. I just gave you the push you needed. But everything you've done, it's all you. She took a deep breath, a mixture of emotions rising in her chest. I know. I didn't know I could do this. Not until you helped me see that I could. He reached out, his hand brushing against hers. The touch was gentle, yet it sent a rush of warmth through her. You've always had it in you. I just helped you believe it. Emma looked up at him, her eyes meeting his with a new understanding. There was something in the air between them now, something unspoken, and it felt right. She had always admired him, but now, standing so close, she saw him in a new light. She was beginning to realize how much he had come to mean to her. Daniel hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words. Emma, he stopped himself, shaking his head slightly, as if unsure whether to say what was on his mind. Emma felt the tension in the air, and her heart raced with anticipation. What is it, Daniel? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He met her gaze again, his expression serious but soft. I know this might sound crazy, but I can't ignore how I feel anymore. I've been watching you grow, seeing your strength, and it's made me realize that I care about you. More than I should. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this, hadn't allowed herself to think about it. But now, standing in front of him, she felt the same pull, the same connection. Daniel, she started, unsure of what to say, but he placed a finger gently to her lips. I don't want you to feel pressured. I just needed to say it. They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of the moment hanging between them. Emma's mind was racing, but deep down, she knew this wasn't just a fleeting feeling. She had been feeling it too. She took a step closer to him, her voice steady now. I care about you too, Daniel. More than I've been willing to admit. His eyes softened, and before either of them could say anything more, he leaned down, brushing his lips gently against hers. The kiss was tender, full of unspoken words, and when they pulled away, Emma could feel her heart beating faster, a new chapter opening in front of her. We'll figure this out, he whispered, his hand still resting lightly on her cheek. Emma nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. Yeah, we will. In that moment, she knew that the future was still uncertain, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to step into it. With Daniel by her side, there was no limit to what she could achieve. And no matter what happened next, she knew that she was no longer alone. She had come a long way, and the journey was just beginning. The weeks that followed were both exhilarating and overwhelming for Emma. With each passing day, her life seemed to accelerate in ways she could never have anticipated. After Daniel's confession, things had shifted between them, but they both seemed to agree that their relationship would unfold at its own pace. The bond between them deepened, both professionally and personally. Emma continued to focus on her art, determined to make the most of the opportunities Daniel had opened up for her. The success of her last gallery show had given her a newfound confidence, and now, with Daniel's encouragement, she was stepping into new realms of the art world she had never dared to dream about. One evening, as Emma worked late in her studio, putting the finishing touches on a new collection, she received a call from Daniel. I've set up something for you, he said, his voice filled with a sense of purpose. There's an art auction coming up in a few weeks. It's a big deal, and they want you to be a part of it. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of these auctions, the kind that attracted the who's who of the art world. It was a golden opportunity, but it also terrified her. Are you sure they want my work? She asked, feeling the familiar doubt creeping in. I'm still not sure if I'm ready for something like that. Daniel's voice softened, the usual calm confidence replaced by something more sincere. Emma, they want you because your work speaks for itself. I've seen it. You've seen it. You have everything it takes to succeed, but you have to believe it too. She let his words sink in. He had been there every step of the way, pushing her when she hesitated, giving her the space to grow, but always reminding her that the decision was hers. I don't know if I can handle that kind of attention, she admitted, her voice quieter now. What if people don't like it? What if I fail? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Daniel finally spoke, his words were measured, calm. Failure is part of the journey. Every artist has been there. What matters is what you do with it. This auction is a chance for you to be seen, to show your work to the people who matter. And if you fail, you try again. But you can't keep hiding, Emma. You've already come so far. Emma closed her eyes, the weight of his words settling in her chest. He was right. She had spent too much of her life hiding behind self-doubt, thinking she wasn't good enough, thinking she didn't deserve the life she was now building. Okay, she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. I'll do it. I'll be part of the auction. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. Emma spent every free moment in her studio, creating new pieces that she felt would resonate with the auction audience. She felt both the pressure and the excitement building inside her, knowing that this could change everything for her. As the day of the auction approached, Emma's nerves began to get the better of her. What if her work wasn't good enough? What if she wasn't ready for the spotlight? She had spent her entire life trying to stay in the background, and now, everything was changing. The night before the auction, she found herself standing in front of the mirror, taking in the woman she had become. The uncertainty still lingered, but it was no longer the overpowering force it once was. She had come so far, and no matter what happened, she knew she had earned her place here. She had earned the right to be seen. The next evening, the auction hall was filled with the hum of conversation, clinking glasses, and the sound of footsteps echoing against the marble floor. Emma stood backstage, her heart racing. She could hear the low murmur of the crowd, the anticipation in the air. She had been backstage at events before, but never like this. She was about to step into the spotlight, not as a waitress or a quiet artist, but as someone with something to offer. As she stepped out onto the stage, her eyes scanned the room. The guests were seated, their attention focused on the podium where the artwork would soon be displayed. The lights were dim, the ambience elegant, and yet, as Emma stood there, she felt like she was walking in a dream. She had always been the person watching, never the one being watched. But now, everything was different. When the first piece of her collection was unveiled, Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had seen her work countless times, but seeing it displayed in such a grand space, surrounded by so many people who appreciated it, was overwhelming. As the bidding began, Emma's heart pounded in her chest. The numbers quickly escalated, far beyond what she had expected. Her work was being valued, her talent recognized in a way it never had been before. She glanced over at Daniel, who stood at the back of the room, his eyes on her. His smile was small but proud, and in that moment, Emma knew she had made the right choice. She had taken the leap, and it had paid off. When the final piece of her collection was sold, the applause that followed felt like a distant echo. Emma was stunned, her hands trembling as she realized what had just happened. She had done it. She had stepped into the light, and she had been accepted. The future was wide open, and for the first time, she didn't feel afraid to walk toward it. Daniel joined her after the auction, his smile wide as he congratulated her. "You were amazing," he said, his voice full of admiration. "I knew you had it in you." Emma smiled back, the weight of the moment sinking in. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it all on your own, Emma, but I'm glad I was here to see it." As the evening ended and the guests began to leave, Emma stood in the middle of the auction hall, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had found her place, not just in the art world, but in her own life. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time, she was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. The weeks that followed the auction were a blur of success for Emma. Her work had gained recognition, and her name was now being spoken with respect in the art world. The gallery that hosted her auction reached out to showcase her pieces in other cities, and her website had started attracting attention from potential buyers and collectors. It felt like everything she had worked for was finally coming together. But even with all of this, Emma couldn't help but feel the weight of the choices ahead. The success was both exhilarating and overwhelming, and as the offers began to roll in, she found herself questioning what was next. She had spent so many years running on autopilot, surviving in the background, never allowing herself to truly dream. But now, with her career in full swing, the question wasn't just about what was possible, it was about what she wanted. One evening, as she sat alone in her studio, her mind racing with ideas for future projects, she felt a familiar presence at the door. It was Daniel, standing in the doorway with a warm smile. "Busy?" he asked, stepping into the room. Emma looked up, her heart racing slightly at the sight of him. Since the auction, they had grown even closer, their bond deepening with each passing day. Yet, despite their growing connection, Emma knew there were still things they needed to address, unspoken feelings that had yet to be acknowledged. "Always," she said with a smile. "But I'm glad you're here." Daniel walked over to her, leaning against the desk. "You've come so far, Emma. I hope you know that." She nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of her canvas. "I know. It's just, sometimes it feels like everything is moving so fast. I can't even catch my breath." Daniel's expression softened. That's what happens when you're doing something you love. It can get overwhelming. But the key is to stay grounded, to know why you're doing it all. Emma looked at him, her thoughts swirling. And what if I don't know why? She asked, her voice quiet. Daniel looked at her thoughtfully for a moment before speaking. You've always known, Emma. It's never been about the money or the recognition. It's about your passion, your drive to create. That's what has always made your work stand out. You create from a place of honesty and heart, and that's why people connect with it. Emma felt a warmth in her chest at his words. He was right. She had never done this for fame or success, but because it was what made her feel alive. It was her way of expressing herself, of sharing her story with the world. I guess I just don't want to lose myself in all of this, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to become something I'm not, just because of success. Daniel reached out, gently taking her hand. You won't, he said with conviction. You're not the type of person who gets lost in the fame. You're grounded, Emma. Your art is a reflection of who you are, and that's not something that can be changed by outside pressure. Emma looked down at their joined hands, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. He squeezed her hand, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You've done it all yourself, Emma. I'm just here to support you. But no matter what happens, I'm proud of you. His words settled over her like a warm blanket, and for the first time in a long while, Emma felt at peace. The future was still uncertain, but she didn't have to navigate it alone. She had come so far from the unsure, insecure woman she once was, and now, with Daniel by her side, she felt ready for whatever came next. I'm ready, she said, looking up at him with determination in her eyes. Whatever comes next, I'm ready. Daniel smiled at her, his eyes filled with pride. I knew you would be. In the following months, Emma continued to grow in ways she never thought possible. Her work gained even more exposure, and she started receiving invitations to showcase her pieces at prestigious art events. She took on new challenges, pushing her creative boundaries and expanding her portfolio. But through it all, she never lost sight of what truly mattered, her passion for creating and the people who supported her along the way. Daniel was there, as he always had been, offering guidance, encouragement, and, most importantly, friendship. Their bond grew stronger with every passing day, and while they continued to explore the depths of their connection, Emma couldn't help but feel grateful for the unexpected path her life had taken. She had found success, but more importantly, she had found herself. She had found the courage to pursue her dreams, to step into the spotlight, and to embrace the unknown. And with Daniel by her side, she knew that no matter where her journey took her, she would never have to walk it alone. Months passed, and Emma's life continued to change in ways she could never have predicted. The success of her art, the recognition, and the opportunities that followed had transformed her, but it was the lessons she learned along the way that made all the difference. Emma had learned to trust herself, to believe in her own worth, and to embrace the unknown with confidence. She had stepped into a world she once thought was out of her reach, and now she had a place in it. Through it all, Daniel remained by her side, not just as a mentor, but as someone she had come to rely on, to care about, in ways she hadn't expected. Their bond had grown stronger over time, and what started as professional support had turned into something deeper, more personal. It was clear that there was more between them, a connection that neither of them could ignore. One evening, as they sat together in her studio, looking over some new pieces she had been working on, Emma found herself wondering what would come next. She had achieved so much, but she was starting to think about what she really wanted, not just in her career, but in her life. Daniel, she said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty, I've been thinking a lot about the future. He looked up from the painting in front of him, his expression open and patient. What's on your mind? Emma paused, taking a deep breath. I've come so far, but I still feel like there's something more. I don't want to just be the artist who got lucky. I want to build something real, something that matters. Daniel nodded, understanding in his eyes. You already have, Emma. You've built a life and a career that's your own. You've found your voice, and that's what matters. Emma smiled softly, but the uncertainty lingered. But I think I'm ready for more. Not just more success, but something deeper. A life that's more than just work. I want to make a difference. Daniel looked at her, his gaze softening. You already are making a difference, Emma. Your work, your story, It's already inspiring people. You've touched so many lives, and you're just getting started. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. I never thought I could do something like this. I never thought I could be someone people would look up to. But now, I'm starting to think I can. I want to help others find their own voice, like I did. Daniel smiled, his pride in her evident. You will. And you'll inspire even more people than you realize. You have everything it takes to change the world, Emma. And I'll be right here, supporting you every step of the way. Emma reached out, taking his hand in hers. For a moment, they both sat in silence, the weight of their shared journey settling between them. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was also full of possibility. Emma knew that no matter what came next, she was no longer afraid to face it. Thank you, she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. For everything. For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. You always had it in you, Emma. I just helped you see it. They sat together for a while longer, the quiet of the studio surrounding them. As Emma looked around at the paintings on the walls, the pieces of her journey laid out in front of her, she realized that this was just the beginning. The path ahead would be challenging, but it would also be beautiful. She had found her passion, her purpose, and most importantly, she had found herself. And with Daniel by her side, she knew that whatever came next, she would face it with courage and strength. I think it's time for a new chapter, Emma said, her voice steady now. A new beginning. Daniel smiled, his eyes filled with pride and affection. I think you're right. As Emma looked out the window of her studio, the city lights twinkling below, she felt a sense of peace she had never known before. The future was wide open, and for the first time in her life, she was ready to step into it with confidence, knowing that she had everything she needed to succeed. The journey had been long, and at times, difficult, but Emma had come out on the other side stronger, wiser, and more sure of who she was than ever before. And with Daniel by her side, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to take them on. With her art, her passion, and her belief in herself, Emma knew the sky was the limit.